But nonetheless, I think everyone needs to prove themselves.
Yeah.
I, at SomaDetect, consider myself incredibly lucky. I have, I'm constantly surrounded by men, which is a little bit funny. But I have incredible support from, a group of men that understand what I'm trying to do and that are willing to help me do that.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. I'm your host, Nate Benson, Director of Media and Public Relations here at 43 North, and we've got a fantastic episode this week. It's a live edition of the podcast. That's right, Latitude Live. This week we feature Bethany Deshpande from 43 North $1 Million winner of 2017, SomaDetect. Now, this episode's a little bit livelier than the normal ones because we recorded it outside at Larkin Square. So you're going to hear motorcycles, fire engines, dump trucks, babies crying, etc. But hey, that's all about the live experience, am I right? So what do we talk about this week? Well, we talk about how SomaDetect got their start, how Bethany's father played an integral role in the founding of the company, why the company decided to apply to 43 North, moving their company to Buffalo and growing it. It's a fantastic episode. Great insights from Bethany. So let's not waste another minute with me and jump right into this week's episode with Bethany Deshpande. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Making a living. So, Bethany, give us the quick pitch of who you are and what you do.
My name is Bethany, founder and CEO of SomaDetect. SomaDetect is an agricultural technology company. We provide farmers with the information they need to make the best possible milk.
Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, correct? Born and raised?
Not born and raised,
Okay.
Founded a business.
Okay, where are you from originally?
Guelph, Ontario.
Okay, so just over the border.
Yeah.
How is things in Buffalo being a Canadian?
They are educational. No, it's lovely. Buffalo is on the ground not that different from Canada. So it is a lovely introduction to living in the States, my first time living in another country. They're great.
When did you kind of get the science bug? And we'll get into kind of your background from a educational standpoint, but your science company, obviously you must have had a science bug as a kid, right?
Yes.
How did that get started?
I always grew up around science. So my dad is very scientifically minded. I have 3 brothers, and we would do all kinds of, camps and activities and whatever as kids, and often some of that would be scientific in nature. I don't think it's a bug I ever got. I think it's just part of who I am, how I grew up, and the things I enjoyed doing.
So my 5-year-old daughter loves space, and she's kind of got that little spark of science that I want to nurture. Any advice you can possibly give me to help a young girl achieve wealth in science, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just put her in front of people, give her access to, science in all of its forms. I think space is fantastic. There is so much cool stuff with, chemistry, physics, math that can be done inside, outside the house. We always had lots of science books around our home as well that I learned about, and my dad has a few very famous science puns and lame science jokes, which I think help a lot as well.
I must talk to your dad after this then, because I peek at bad dad jokes. So, so according to my research, you're quite the nerd. BA in Mathematics, Health and Environmental Sciences, a Master in Biology, a PhD in Philosophy, Environmental Biology, and limnology?
Limnology.
What is the limnology?
Limnology is the study of lakes.
Okay.
It's generally called it's like oceanography, but for freshwater.
Sure. So why not just lakeology?
Limno means lake.
Yeah, but here in America, a lake is a lake. Anyway, no, just kidding. So, do you have any more room on your wall for any more degrees?
No.
It's maxed out?
I've done a lot of school.
Why, what was it about, amassing a large wealth of education important for you?
I mean, I don't think I went out. It's not that I wanted to, be in school for a long time or anything. It was like I was in school. I enjoyed school. No one ever tells you to stop going to school. And I had really incredible opportunities throughout my education to work with, amazing scientists, some really fun projects. And so I had my head down in school and academia and loved it. And so it wasn't a question of, I didn't stop because there was no reason to.
Prior to SomaDetect, what were you doing? Besides amassing like 10 degrees?
The job I had directly before starting this company was for what's called the New Brunswick Social Policy Research Network. And I was a community engagement officer. So I was linking or helping to link work done at the University of New Brunswick or universities throughout New Brunswick, so academia, with government and policy, and then community organizations and charities.
So why leave kind of that established government-style job for a startup?
The startup was initially a side project to that job. I had fantastic support from the boss at that organization and my coworkers, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger to the point where I couldn't do two things. I had to choose, and so I chose Soma.
So what was the seed of SomaDetect? How did it get started? How did you get the idea? Tell us that backstory.
For sure. So my dad is a light scattering expert. He's someone that's been working on these types of sensor systems for all of my life, and in 2016 managed to get a patent for somatic cell detection in raw milk through, that he had discovered sort of accidentally. And at that time, I was involved in the entrepreneurial community a little bit. I had worked for a few startups myself throughout my undergrad and my graduate work. And so I was, it really started as talking to him about different ways to go about commercialization, if that interested him at all. And my dad sort of said, well, you do it. You apply for grants or see what you can do. And so it started that way. And then we got in touch with farmers, some dairy consultants and dairy folk, and it just went from there. There's huge interest, huge market pull, lots of encouragement. And so, yeah.
So rewinding a little bit, what's kind of the science, for light, emitting expert, so to speak?
Yeah, so SomaDetect, so we use it's an optical sensor, light scattering sensor. So we shine light through milk and we capture images of the scatter pattern of basically how the light changes as it goes through that milk. And then we use deep learning, artificial intelligence and computer vision in order to determine what is in that milk sample and the concentrations of it.
Explain that to me as if I'm 5.
We use light to look at milk.
I'm sorry, I always have to ask that. So 2016, you guys get the patent. Then what?
Then farm visits. Then we started, I had a few phone calls from local folks that had heard about, the idea at that stage and were willing to talk to us about dairy farming and about, the challenges, about how they do this currently and all of those things. So it really started with getting to know some farmers and getting to know the industry.
What was some of the initial feedback from farmers, especially early on with your technology? Because it wasn't probably as polished as your device is now. It was probably kind of not thrown together, but very alpha prototype, right?
It was. At that stage, we had one sensor that my dad had made literally in our basement, and little understanding of what it took to raise cows and make milk. I still remember, so initially we were going to do it was a benchtop type thing. So a farmer would take a sample of milk and put it through the machine. And I still remember one farmer we spoke to looked at this and said, if you make me do one more chore, you can get off my farm. That was sort of the advice we were given.
Yeah, they're trying to make their workflow a lot more efficient, obviously.
That's right. They have a lot to do. They're busy. There are always a million different things calling for their attention. And so we knew they needed something automated that didn't require extra work and that could fit into their existing workflow as easily as possible.
So 2017 kind of kicked around, and you guys decided to apply to 43 North. Why did you guys decide to do that?
It was Brian on my team that saw a Facebook ad and ended up sort of sending it to the group. We were 4 people working on this at the time and said, we should apply. This looks like it could be a good fit. So
kudos to Kim Spire from our team, who was able to target the ad properly, because here we
Yes.
are a year later.
Correct.
So you guys apply. What was going through your head? Where was the company kind of at that point? Was it kind of just like sending out feelers and just trying to get anything that sticks?
Yeah, we were applying for a lot of different things. We were, different competitions, different, stuff like that, accelerators, incubators. We were applying for funding. We're trying to get, even just early seed funding at that stage. And also trying to figure out our market, figure out the product market fit, figure out what steps we needed to do next, what levers we could pull to really get somewhere with the business.
So fast forward to October last year at Shays, you guys won the $1 million award for 43 North. Do you remember much from that night?
I remember being in shock.
Yeah.
It was like 43 North is such an experience. What a night. And the whole day, the whole week is intense. The day is extra intense. And then the night is just like, I don't know, spine-tinglingly intense. And so, no, we didn't, to be perfectly honest, we didn't expect to win 43 North. Even the moments when they were calling out the winners, not sure that it was really us or not. All of those things sort of go through your mind. And then, you go out on stage and it's bright lights and thousands of people and everyone was just cheering and mooing and all of these things. So it was an incredible experience, but I was just in complete shock, basically, from the moment I walked out on stage to pretty much the end of the night. Mm-hmm. Just, not sure how to react, not understanding what it would mean for our company, what it would mean for me, and it was such a surprise.
Fast forward a little bit further to 2018. You started as a group of 4 and now you're up to over a dozen on staff, right?
Yeah, we're 15, 16 people at this stage.
So you're growing in Buffalo. What's that growth been like? What's the experience been like from a business standpoint? Obviously, New York State is a large dairy producer, so it made sense for you guys to operate out of Western New York, right?
Yeah, it's been great. We are as a company incredibly privileged in Buffalo. So part of that is being the 43 North winner. I think that helps open doors. You get really rapidly connected to the people you need to be connected to and all of those things. Part of it is being in dairy in this state. There are so many, not just farmers, but support organizations. We have Cornell here. DFA and Dairy One play a major role as well. So lots of support from all of those organizations. And then, it's made it really exciting for us, really possible to find people that believe in what we're doing, that want to support us, that want to work with us in any way possible.
You've also been doing a little bit of jet setting, spent some time in Netherlands, was it? Or I know it was Europe, right?
Yeah.
And then also some time in Kansas City doing 2 very different partnerships, right?
That's right. So we were, in Netherlands at the very beginning of the year. We did a visit to France as well, which was great. The French care enormously about their food, about their farmers. And so that was really fun to see. Lots of specialized products there as well. So quite different from how we do it in Canada or even in the US. And then, lots. I've seen so many different states since I moved to Buffalo. It's been really fun. Kansas City Missouri being one of them. I drove to Pennsylvania a few weeks ago, which you don't realize how close things are. But that was really fun. Yeah, I got to experience the 4th of July for the first time. In Canada, July 4th is just a regular day, and here that is not the case. So, lots of great stuff, lots of really fun things.
How's the experience of growing a team been? Like I said, you had 4, now you're up to 15, 16. Sometimes with startups that can be a clash of personalities. It can be a issue of developing a company culture. So on top of trying to build these, machine learning, artificially intelligent sensors, you're also trying to build a company culture. What challenges or successes have you had in that area?
Yeah, that's nothing can prepare you for that. It is such an incredible thing. I mean, my team is mostly here, so I'm going to talk about you in front of you. But when you start a company, you are doing, the founding team is doing everything. It's all really intense. Everything that's going on. You constantly have your hands in basically every bucket, like no problem. And I mean, even in Fredericton, we joke around a lot, because in Fredericton we worked out of an old school building, had been built in the 1800s, and we all sort of worked in one room. So you could just like literally lift your head up and say, hey, what's happening with this? Or did anyone hear from so-and-so, or whatever it was? And you'd have immediate answers. Communication was not even a word we used, because it just happened all the time. It was effortless. Yeah. And one of the things with 43 North in Buffalo was that we went from all working in one room to suddenly being in 2 offices. And at that point, we didn't have like meeting structures. We didn't have any, agendas. And I mean, we barely had roles at that point, right? Yeah. Everyone was kind of just doing everything. And so throughout this year, we've been defining all of those things, how we work together, what people taking on more specialized roles. Not only, I mean, on the technical side, I think specialized roles happen very, easily. People have their technical skill set, but on the business side as well, putting in folks that are responsible for sales and partnerships and all of those things. And that is such a learning thing for me. I went through these periods where I was like, what is happening? I have no idea, and feeling really disconnected, and then having to find both the balance of making sure I was informed about the things I needed to be informed of, but also learning to trust that your team is going to get it done, that they know what they're doing, that you don't have to micromanage every single detail and all of that. So that has absolutely been something we're going through. We're pretty intentional at our company about culture and team, and wanting to build a workplace that is for us, right? That suits the type of people we want to be, the type of work we want to do, all of the, for everyone that works here, I think there's so many sort of reasons beyond money that we're working at SomaDetect. And so making sure that we're honoring those and aware of those as we move forward is really important to us.
You're certainly planting roots here, obviously an office here. Your sensors are getting manufactured in Rochester. You've developed partnerships with Cornell. And like I said earlier, New York State Dairy's number 3 in the country, so you have a lot of potential customers. What's the reactions been with these partners you've developed about what you guys are trying to do?
Just excitement, encouragement. We have, I just think we're so lucky in that way. We have people that stand up, not only, across the country, in Europe, all over, that are excited about what we're doing. We have farmers that come forward and say, anything I can do to help, let me know. And we'll use them. We'll show up on their farm. We'll collect samples, ask questions, all of those things. And I feel incredibly, incredibly lucky to have that behind me.
Being a woman founder, woman entrepreneur, there's tons of literature out there about the struggles of something like that. Have you had any experiences, especially, going to farms trying to sell your product and, it being kind of like the old boys club, or is, even some of these larger corporate dairies, things like that?
So never from farmers.
Okay.
I find the challenge exists far more in, in the startup world. I think that we know about more issues there. Dairy is definitely sort of an old boys club, but they're not closed to having a young woman come in and especially when you can sort of help to solve a really big problem. So no, and farmers, I really think on dairy farms, they work with their wives, they work with their sisters or cousins or whatever it is. Even if the main farmer, but so most of the main farmers are male, there are absolutely some incredible female farmers out there. but it is a male-dominated industry, but they're it's not an industry that exists without women. I think so much of dairy, and I mean, if we think about dairy cows, it's, every dairy cow is a mother, right? And dairy farmers are ultimately taking care of people that make milk. It's an incredibly nutritious food that is, that has so much family and motherhood and all of these ideas built into it. And so, it's been great for that.
So really the experience has been, the farmer doesn't care who's bringing them the tool, as long as that tool is going to help them make more money, they're fine with it, right?
That's about it, yeah.
And I know you mentioned kind of in the early alpha stages of your guys' sensor, the reception's been good. Dairy farmers getting hammered right now with tariffs. A lot of the family-owned farms are getting bought up by corporations or just closing altogether, so there's kind of less dairy altogether. How's the reaction been now that you're kind of in Western New York? You're seeing both kind of the corporately owned farms and the family farms. When you come to them with a machine learning, artificially intelligent super machine that's going to help them make money.
Yeah, I do just want to say, I think most farms, the farms we work with in New York State, they are all family-owned farms. Sometimes the family will own more than one farm, so it might be two brothers or some combination like that, a brother and a sister, that each manage a separate farm, and at that point they'll be registered corporations,
sure.
But it's still a family business. So many of the farmers, like I always tell this story of there's a farm just outside of Buffalo that we spoke to, and it's a son. I mean, so many farmers are there because their grandfather did it, their great-grandfather did it, their dad did it, and they're really holding up an incredible family legacy that we have. So I always feel just so connected, and it's lovely to learn about the family histories of the people that make our food. It's really an incredible pleasure. And so, but it is a tough time out there. I don't think there's a single farm or dairy farmer in New York State that's making profit off the dairy side of their business. And that's commodity pricing. That is part of what they're dealing with, and absolutely a challenge. And so we at SomaDetect, we understand that. We go on these farms, we see the struggle. When we talk to them about our sensor, sometimes we don't get buy-in because they say, well, I don't know if I'm going to have a farm in a year or 3 years. And that's a really hard thing to listen to. That's their career. That's what they've always been trained to do. So anything we can do in our business to help support farmers, that is what we're here for. And that's part of it. We're commercializing a technology at a time that is probably it's by far not the easiest thing to sell something to dairy farmers, because they are, they're spending money keeping their farm alive, just hoping to make it through this next year. And so, anything we can do to help them is, we are all for it.
About a month or two ago, you were in the office jubilant because Chris Hadfield had tweeted about SomaDetect. For those in the audience or listening on the podcast who aren't familiar with Chris Hadfield, tell us who he is and why he's tweeting about SomaDetect.
Chris Hadfield is a Canadian astronaut. He ran the International Space Station for a number of years. He is someone incredibly passionate about science, about space, about the world, about innovation. And he grew up on a farm, not a dairy farm, but in a farming family in Sarnia, Ontario. And in my PhD work, I was involved a lot in scientific outreach. So we were developing actually cartoons about permafrost for high school students on sort of an international scale. And Chris Hadfield...
Very niche audience. Permafrost cartoons, okay.
It is a little bit of a niche project, but Chris Hadfield was always, we'd look at everything he did from Twitter to his YouTube videos as such incredible inspiration for science outreach. Imagine if, even 50% of the scientists out there, and being a scientist is hard, they're busy, but imagine if they were making videos and showing our kids and showing people throughout the world what their science was about. And so I basically wanted to be like Chris Hadfield. I make no secret of that. I loved everything about what he did. who sings in space, right? How fantastic. And so, when I met him, and he was just fully ready to support our business. He was excited about what we were doing from an innovation perspective and so many other things. And so I am absolutely thrilled. I mean, I think there are so many people that have come forward to stand up and support what we're doing at SomaDetect and to help me in that journey, and Chris is absolutely one of them.
So what's the outlook look like for SomaDetect the rest of 2018?
Right now we are focused, we are making sensors, and we're going to be putting them on farm in Q4 of this year. And so we are focused on, we have a number of farms lined up who are going to be our early adopters in New York State, in Ontario, and Atlantic Canada. So really working with them to get sensors on farm, and continuing our work at Cornell, and continuing to build our team to be incredibly strong, incredibly robust, and a group of people that love working together.
What's going to be the biggest challenge for you guys in the next 12 months?
I think there's a lot to do when you have a startup. There are just so many moving pieces. There are a lot of priorities at any given time, and I think the biggest challenge we have is, first, I think that's one of them. So knowing what your priority is, being really clear on that for yourself, for your team, for your investors, for your farmers, for all of those people.
All right, busy 12 months ahead. All right, let's open it up. Anybody have any questions for myself or Bethany? Not really me. I don't know anything, but Bethany knows a lot more, obviously. So if there's any quick questions, we can get to them. Brian Straka, any questions for Bethany? Not yet? Or you come at me in a minute, buddy. Anybody? Nicholas.
Do I need to come up to you, or do I...
I'll repeat the question for the microphone.
Perfect. Bethany, as a young entrepreneur, what would be any recommendations of, where to start if you want to start a business? What do you want to do if you want to get into this? What was the, in a way, what is the most successful first step that you would recommend somebody to take?
It's a great question from the audience. Basically, how do you get started with a startup?
I think, that's a great question. Part of me wants to say, well, find something you're passionate about, but I think when I started, I neither knew anything about dairy nor would have listed it as one of my passions, although it certainly has grown that way. I think...
it seemed like early on your passion was permafrost cartoons, so you went from permafrost cartoons to AI-powered milk detectors. It's a bit of a leap.
I think find someone to help you do it. Find someone that can support you through that. In my case, it's my husband, my dad, so many of the people I work with today. I think if you can find just one person who is willing to support you and help you as you explore different ideas, different problems, different industries, that's a great way to get going.
Was there ever an issue? Obviously, you had the support from your husband and your father. Your father kind of gave you the patent, essentially, for this idea.
Yeah.
But were there any others who did you approach and say, hey, I want to try this, and was their response, you should probably stick to something else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are always naysayers. There are a million no's all of the time. And even we would talk to farmers that would say, well, I don't get it, right? I wouldn't really use this. And then you talk to another one that was just so excited and thought it was completely game-changing. So I think there will always be people that say no. I think you need to listen to the reasons why they're saying no and really dig in and understand that.
Brian, any questions for Davielle? Sure. So the question's being a woman founder, entrepreneur, CEO, kind of the trials and tribulations of that. We touched on a little bit, kind of like approaching the dairy farmers, but business across the board for a woman entrepreneur and the founders is pretty difficult, right?
I think so much of business is about proving yourself. I think, I think proving yourself not just to investors or judges or whoever it may be. I think you prove yourself to each and every one of your coworkers. I think you prove yourself to the industry that you're working in. And I would say there's no doubt that proving yourself can be a little bit more challenging, or maybe a lot more challenging for women than it is for men. But nonetheless, I think everyone needs to prove themselves.
Yeah.
I, at SomaDetect, consider myself incredibly lucky. I have, I'm constantly surrounded by men, which is a little bit funny. But I have incredible support from, a group of men that understand what I'm trying to do and that are willing to help me do that, and that put up with either my own challenges as a woman, but also anyone that tries to get in my way, that tries to stand up and challenge me because I'm a woman. I very rarely have to be the one to point out gender discrepancies or unfairness or any of those things. I think those are things that men are starting to see more and more, and certainly the men that work with me have their eye out for. They're sort of ready to stand up for me in any way for that. And it's certainly not easy. I wouldn't say that it is, but I consider myself just so lucky to have the support that I do from the men on my team.
I've only known you just shy of a year. You're certainly not a person, at least I believe, that would hold a grudge at all. That being said, has there been ever an instance where, you're meeting with an investor or a mentor or something like that who just kind of got under your skin and there was that, all right, I'll show you, because, either they tried to mansplain it to you or talk down to you for being a woman entrepreneur and, had this amazing idea, but for whatever reason, there's crapping on it.
Yeah. I have a list of people where it's like, I'm
so that whole thing about a grudge is all apparently wrong. She has a list, folks.
No, but I say that, and these are stories we share in our company. These are things that help us so much. I think that when you are, I'm sorry, but in the 8th hour, when you are collecting milk samples, and you're exhausted and you smell like milk and other things, and you haven't seen the sun in, literally the entire day has passed and you haven't gotten to really know about that and all these things, I think, or just whatever it is, I think you reach moments in your startup where you are exhausted, where you are almost don't have anything else to carry you through, right? So I often say, when all of those good things leave you, right? When all the right reasons to do it are beyond what you're able to sort of muster at that moment, spite is an incredibly powerful emotion. Spite is an incredibly motivating factor. And so when all else fails, we do it out of spite.
Has there been ever a time in kind of the SomaDetect journey where you thought it's not going to work, I got to get back to the real world? Yeah,
every 2 days for the first 3 months, I think. I think there was a point where every single time I would learn about a similar or competing technology, I would call someone up and I would say, oh, never mind. They've already got it, or we're too far behind, or whatever it was. And then someone else would look at it and say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? What we have is completely different. And so, I tend to be much more of a pessimist than an optimist. I think that I had to go through those periods of doubt, of not just myself, but of the technology of what we were doing. But ultimately, that helped totally shape my incredible confidence in what we're doing, in the technology, in the business, and that we really, really have something. I've checked. I've looked at all the other possibilities. I've been through that process probably half a dozen times, but I know we have something.
Any other questions? Brian Strzok has got one.
You've hired since coming here, as Nate mentioned before, and you have employees in 2 locations. What traits do you think you need to be looking for when you're hiring for a startup and across those 2 locations as well?
The question's about hiring. What traits do you look for when hiring for a startup? Do you just hire your friends and family and hope for the best, or do you search for the best talent?
What is the best talent? I think that's not an easy thing to answer. At SomaDetect, I look for people that care. I'm looking for folks that are fighting for something beyond a day job, that have, something to fight for, something big. And I'm also looking for diversity. So we, not just gender diversity, but cultural. We have a good balance of introverts and extroverts on our team, all of those things. And I think you need it all in order to really, work together.
I think we had a question up here.
Yeah, actually, that's another question from Brian, so I'll get rid of it now. How do you keep your team motivated and your morale high when there's ups and downs, in a startup?
So ups and downs, company culture. How do you keep things as the leader of the pack, so to speak? How do you keep things from totally falling apart and keeping the team together?
Yelling. No, not really. I'm just kidding.
More discipline. No, just kidding.
No, that's a great question. It's not easy. And when you run a company, you have to ask people to do things that suck. Like, that's quite frankly the case. I think, I'm lucky enough to work with a group of people that are incredibly motivated from the start. I think reminding ourselves as frequently as possible of not just the big picture, not just sort of, how big of a thing we are trying to do, but also how far we've come. And then we have, every little while we have good news and good things that happen, and just sharing that with people has been a huge help. And it's so nice. We have folks, it's no secret. So we have people that will work all day on a Sunday, or that will stay up all night to get things done. And so you're asking a lot. You're asking people to sort of give up time with family, or in some cases, events with friends that they wanted to go to in order to achieve a goal within the company. But I think sometimes you have to do that. And so recognizing that with people, thanking them for that, and just reminding people of that bigger picture. All of these things together really help. And ultimately we are trying to celebrate more. That's a big part of our goal in the company. And so having things that are fun, having things that people look forward to a lot, and all that stuff.
But it's got to be fun to be just drunk with power whenever you feel like it, right? As the boss?
I don't think so. I think it is actually a very a daunting responsibility, that you face.
All right. Well, how about a round of applause for Bethany Deshpande? Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for coming out to Latitude Live. We'll see you at the next one. I want to thank Bethany again for joining me on the podcast, and you can check out SomaDetect's.com to learn all about what they're doing in the dairy industry. Remember, you can subscribe to the 43 North newsletter so you don't miss out on any of the Buffalo startup events like Latitude Live, Startup Weekend, any future workshops or seminars that 43 North is hosting. And head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review of this podcast, and shoot me an email, podcast@43north.org, for any future suggestions about who you'd like to see on this show, future guests, future topics, or future bad dad jokes, because I'm the king of those. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you at the next one.